Hi, everyone. My name is Kelsey Shane. I'm the Marketing Director at the Canadian Digestive Health Foundation, and I'd like to welcome you all to our webinar this evening on living positively with ulcerative colitis. Tonight, we are very lucky to be chatting with three individuals, Effie, Katie, and Emma, who currently are diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, about their experience with getting diagnosed, current medications, and helpful tips they use every day to manage their UC. The girls want you to know what they didn't so you can understand what's happening inside your body and take action to live your life your way despite having a chronic invisible illness. For those who don't know CDHF, we are the official foundation of the Canadian Association of Gastroenterology, which means we are directly connected to Canada's leading digestive health experts, physicians, scientists, and other healthcare professionals. So you can trust us and our website to provide you with practical science-based information that is up to date and unbiased. This webinar has been made possible through an unrestricted educational grant from Pfizer Canada, Merck, and Takeda. It's one thing to read a pamphlet on ulcerative colitis or hear from a healthcare professional, but there is something truly valuable about learning from others' experiences. So we thank you all for giving us the opportunity to shed some light on patient experiences this evening. Just a few housekeeping notes before we get started. This is a live presentation. During it, if you have any questions that come to mind, please enter your questions in the question box at the bottom right-hand side of the screen, and questions will be addressed at the end of the presentation. If you have a question for a specific individual, so Effie, Katie, or Emma, please mention their name. And then if you do not see the form, click the Ask a Question hand icon on the top right of the screen, and someone will be standing by to help you. So just before we get into chatting with our friends, Effie, Emma, and Katie, I'm going to do a brief overview of what inflammatory bowel disease is, and ulcerative colitis specifically. We also have a ton of resources online at cdhf.ca for you to explore, so feel free to check those out. So inflammatory bowel disease, IBD for short, describes a group of conditions, the two main forms of which are Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis are diseases that inflame the lining of the GI tract and disrupt your body's ability to digest food, absorb nutrients, and eliminate waste in a healthy manner. As a result, you may feel several different symptoms, so abdominal pain, cramping, gas, bloating, fatigue, diarrhea, which could possibly be bloody, and loss of appetite. Ulcerative colitis only affects portions of the large intestine, including the rectum and anus, and typically only inflames the innermost lining of bowel tissue. It almost always starts at the rectum, extending upwards in a continuous manner through the colon. And although ulcerative colitis is a chronic condition, meaning it's lifelong, there are medications which can improve symptoms, reduce inflammation, and lead you to an improved quality of life. It's important to mention that medications that your doctor prescribes for you are going to be unique to you. So there's no one-size-fits-all approach to medications. So be prepared to find out that others with the same condition may be taking different medications than you in different doses and in various combinations. In fact, each of the girls on this presentation are taking something different. So keep that in mind when you hear from each of them. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our first speaker this evening, which is Effie. Hey, Effie, how's it going?
Hi, Kelsey. Hello, everyone.
How's it going?
It's going good. How are you?
Good. So why don't you introduce yourself to us? Just give us a little bit of background info on who you are, what you do, that sort of thing.
Sure. So my name is Effie. I was diagnosed in November of 2015, and I am a photographer and a videographer. I like to golf. I like to rock climb, and I live in Toronto.
Cool. And I also wanted to mention just that Effie has worked with CDHF on a number of ulcerative colitis initiatives. She's been a really great advocate for her own health, and she has a YouTube channel that we have featured some of her videos on cdhf.ca. So you can see in the top right corner her YouTube handle there. So you should definitely check those out. Effie, can you give us the rundown on what it's like when you first got diagnosed with ulcerative colitis?
Sure. So I remember being at a cottage and having really, really bad stomach pain. and I started getting really bad diarrhea. So I decided I would go home, and it was like a 3-hour drive back home, and I thought I was going to die. It was so bad. I had to keep pulling over. It was like the scariest drive of my life. But I went to a clinic, just a walk-in clinic. They thought that maybe I had food poisoning. So I started taking Advil and Pepto-Bismol, and it didn't get better. I went to the emergency room. They thought that I had picked up a virus on the recent trip to British Columbia. So they told me to just keep taking Pepto-Bismol, which I later found out that's pretty bad to do if you have ulcerative colitis. It like inflames you even more.
Yeah.
And then the next few days, I started to see blood in my stool. At that point, I went to my general practitioner, and I feel so lucky every time I say this, but she did her thesis in ulcerative colitis, so she recognized my symptoms almost instantly and thought, wow, I need to get her a colonoscopy like tomorrow. So she booked me in, and I did the prep that day. I tried to do the prep at home, but I was just so weak. I was going to the bathroom so many times. So I checked into the hospital and finished the prep there. So I was diagnosed the next day with ulcerative colitis, or severe pancolitis, actually. So, yeah, that was crazy, and we didn't know what that was. It was the first time I had heard of ulcerative colitis or Crohn's or anything. They told me that it was my colon. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. I really don't know what it means. They gave us this pamphlet, and the pamphlet was just telling us like what it is in very medical terms, and also kind of outlined a bunch of medications that I could take. But it didn't really outline the questions that we had like right away, like, am I going to get better? Is it in the pamphlet it said it was a chronic condition, so we're like, oh my god, I'm going to have this for the rest of my life. Like, will I be like this forever? And yeah, so we had so many questions. The hardest part about finding out you have ulcerative colitis is that like you don't understand what caused it. There are so many like factors out there, and my parents were like blaming themselves, and I was blaming myself, although I didn't know why, because I lived a healthy lifestyle. I was eating healthy, I was exercising. I thought I was eating healthy at the time, but yeah, so I had no idea what life would look like for me after that.
Okay. And on your About You, you mentioned you're on Remicade. So what was the process of finding a medication that worked for you, and are you currently in remission?
Yeah, so I am in remission now. It took about 6 months from being diagnosed to find something that started to work for me, and like actually help me get better. But the process was a little slower than I would hope for other people, because what they do is they try to put you on medications that aren't as strong as Remicade and like keep bumping you up. So I was trying some 5-ASAs that weren't working, and I just kept getting worse and worse. So I was in and out of the hospital while I was on prednisone as well.
Okay.
And my GP came by again, and she's like, why aren't they putting you on the good stuff? So she told my GI, she's like, you guys need to get her on this stuff. So they put me on Remicade, and it takes a few doses to start to kick in, but after a couple of months, I was starting to feel better.
Okay, great. That's good to hear. And what is your relationship like with your team of healthcare professionals or other personal support systems?
Well, I see my GP just as often as I think anyone else would. Like, I go in to see her every time I need a refill on my birth control, so that gives me a reason to talk to her.
Yeah.
But honestly, I'm doing so well now that I just go in for my regular, like, once a year with my GI, and every 6 months or every 6 weeks I go in to get my Remicade infusion. So the person I talk to the most probably is my nurse there at the infusion clinic.
Okay.
She's actually become a pretty good friend of mine, so it's pretty cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay. So I just want to get into some ways that you cope with ulcerative colitis on a day-to-day basis. So first off, we definitely know that there's a strong brain-gut connection. So ways to de-stress and relax have been shown to help improve GI symptoms, improve your mood, and that sort of thing. So what are some ways that you manage stress?
Definitely sleep and exercise would be the biggest things for me. I can tell when I'm getting stressed and I don't have enough sleep that it's like it's such a big factor to having this illness.
Do you find that it directly affects your symptoms when you are stressed?
Yeah. It's not like that bad, but if you combine it with like not getting enough sleep and not exercising and not eating well, then it kind of really sucks.
Okay. And then another way that has been shown to help people is food and nutrition. So we know everyone's different and there's no specific Crohn's or ulcerative colitis diet, but do you have any food or recommendation tips that might help some people?
Yeah, so it took me about a year of trial and error on what would work best for me. So I ended up sticking with a plant-based whole food diet and basically cutting out processed foods and sugar. And I'm not like that amazing at it. Everyone has sugar cravings once in a while, but definitely cutting that out more than I ever did before. And yeah, it was weird because that was something I had to navigate by myself. The doctors were telling me that I could eat whatever I wanted. I remember walking in and telling him, I think I'm going to try a plant-based diet. And he goes, oh, that's weird. Like, you can eat whatever you want on Remicade. I'm like, not really.
Yeah.
I feel so much better when I eat like this. Like, it's weird that it's not, that GIs, I guess, don't really help facilitate what you can eat and stuff like that.
Right, yeah, I think it's so specific to different people, right, to find what works for you. So I'm definitely happy to hear that it works well for you, what you're doing, so that's good. And what about intimacy in relationships? Like, has you see affected your relationships in your life at all, or how would you cope with that?
Honestly, I don't think that has affected me at all. I think it's just my change in lifestyle because of UC. So I think it's hard for everyone that's on a plant-based diet to go out and eat with friends or whatever. That's, I think, the biggest thing that I've found that affects me. And yeah, my boyfriend just makes sure that he knows I need enough sleep and I need to live a stress-free lifestyle. So if I have to take a day off of work, since I work for myself, it's okay.
Yeah,
but he totally understands. Yeah. And yeah, he's one of my biggest supporters and makes sure I stay on track with what I'm putting into my body and how I'm living a stress-free lifestyle.
That's awesome. Definitely helps to have a strong support system. So.
Oh yeah,
that's great.
It's not just my boyfriend either. So like my whole family and all my friends. I'm so lucky.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I guess what advice would you give to those who have been diagnosed? Any advice really, or how you maintain a positive outlook, or any tips and tricks that you may want to add?
I would say that you should probably be your own advocate. I don't think there's a pretty big gap in being diagnosed and getting the right information. Obviously, the CDHF helped me so much. They, you guys were able to give me information that I needed in layman's terms. The doctor stuff was like way too like out there for me at the time. I just couldn't understand it. So just learning about this stuff on your own is basically what you have to do, I think, when you have this. And keeping positive, I would say. There are a lot of people that live with this disease, and they think that it's the end of their life, and they don't try to fix it, or I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. No, I think, like you said, it's okay to be sad sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, it's not every day is going to be a great day, but it's important to maintain that positivity like you do.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we head on to Emma?
Maybe I wanted to mention that I started my YouTube channel because of the fact that I couldn't get the information that I wanted, like, clearly. So because I am a videographer and I have this background, I thought I might as well put this to use and help other people. So basically, if you're diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, I would send you to my channel just to learn about it and, like, understand that you're not alone and things can get better. So
yes, and I would definitely recommend anyone checking out your channel as well, because you explain things in really easy to ways. So definitely check her out. So thank you so much, Effie. If you guys have any questions for Effie, make sure you just put them in the question box with her name, and I'll ask her those at the end of the presentation. So moving on to Emma. How are you, Emma?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. Welcome to the webinar. I just wanted to mention before we jump into Emma's presentation too that she has a really good YouTube channel as well, and she has been featured on CDHF's website too about her experiences, what she eats in a day, and that sort of thing. So her channel is on her little slide there as well. So check her out. So Emma, why don't you give us a little bit of an intro to you and who you are and your background and all that as well?
Yeah, okay. So like you said, my name's Emma. I'm going to start off by saying that I just turned 20. So that, kind of like the theme of my presentation is that this is my life through this, like, growing period.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'll get to that. On this page, some fun things. I'm a university student. I'm just about to start my third year at Queen's University. I'm a business major, which is not the most fun, but so far so good. Some other stuff. Huge Game of Thrones fan. Obviously, topic of this is UC, but if you want to talk about the Game of Thrones finale, I'm open to that too. Also on this slide is my karaoke song. Honestly, these are just some fun facts. And it is My Heart Will Go On.
Great song.
Great watching
song.
Game of Thrones religiously are two of my hobbies. So really want to start with that. None of the more important stuff. On this slide, you can see I was diagnosed September 2017. So not that long ago, less than 2 years ago. So I guess that's a good little premise for myself.
Awesome. And what was it like for you when you first got diagnosed?
I am the type of person, and I think it comes from, I was an athlete growing up, and whenever you get hurt, they tell you to just get up and move on. Mm-hmm. So I really dragged on the entire process. I actually started seeing blood in the stool a year before anything began with, like, medical professionals. So about a year before I was diagnosed, I did go to a specialist, and they pretty much were like, "You're fine." So I was like, "Okay, I'm fine." And then any symptom that came up after that point, I was like, well, the doctor once told me, that one doctor who I didn't ask for a second opinion, even though I was seeing blood, told me I was fine, so I must be fine. So by the time I was diagnosed, which was after about a year of like progression of symptoms, it was to a point where like I pretty much couldn't live a normal life. I couldn't stay awake for like longer than 2 hours. And at this point, I was very much at the beginning of my first year of university, actually in the first month, when it started getting really bad. So that is not only did it suck to obviously not feel good, but I was in probably the biggest transitional stage of my life. I had just moved away from home. I was trying to feed myself. I was trying to, have a social life, and yet, like, I just couldn't, I was constantly going to the bathroom, which at the time I was very humiliated by because I was making new friends. I had a roommate. Just bad timing, and it was really severe. So that was my first, when I got diagnosed, eventually just got to the point where I was in Kingston and my mom came up. I remember I like fainted in a class just because I was not retaining any food. And my mom came to Kingston, drove me back to Toronto to a hospital called Mount Sinai. Just a little plug because they're great. And from that, I was in there for about a month.
Okay. And just for anyone who is listening that may be like Emma, there's definitely those red flag symptoms, like blood in your stool for Crohn's and ulcerative colitis. So definitely if you're seeing blood, you should speak to your doctor for sure. So glad you brought that up. And then your profile mentions you're on Entyvio. So what was the process like in finding a medication that works for you, and are you currently in remission?
Yeah, so I actually, when I was in the hospital, I began the first, they were just trying to figure out what would work for me, what was wrong with me, whatever, and then I was prescribed to prednisone, same as Effie, and it started working really well for about a day or two, and I left the hospital, and then about a day later, my symptoms returned. So I went back to the hospital, and we realized prednisone doesn't work, and I have like a really quick turnover to medications. So it became really important that the one I was on was the one I stuck with. So then we figured out that Remicade works. I don't know if anyone's ever for people who have been on Remicade, they know that the first time you take it, they make sure that you take Benadryl before because it's prone to allergies. And so the first time it worked out, and then eventually we realized that I was anaphylactic towards it when we tried without Benadryl. So that was a no-go. And so then we were like, okay, trial number 3, here we go. And we had Entyvio. And honestly, it's half an hour instead of 2 hours. And so I like that. And so far it's been working. Obviously, the fact that I do turn over really quickly to medications is always in the back of my mind. But for now, since it's working and it's once every 2 months, I'm just looking at it positively. And, so far, I think I'm in remission. I haven't had UC long enough to, like, know exactly what feeling completely okay is like.
Right.
But I think it's always been, like, a steady upward since Entyvio, so I'm very positive that I am in remission.
Well, that's really good to hear. So I know that from our experiences working together that you work with a number of healthcare professionals as part of your support system. So do you want to walk us through each of those?
Yeah, so I think I am a very open person, and so I grasped anyone who was willing to help at all. So that's along with a support system. Just like most people, I have a specialist, and just like my family doctor, I see my specialist still pretty often just because my diagnosis is still recent. He is super helpful with, like, the very medical things. But obviously with a chronic disease, there's more than just the very medical things. So my family doctor, same kind of thing, very medical things. But unfortunately, as I said, I was an athlete. So athletes have probably the worst diet for this disease, which is just like steaks, veggies, green veggies, like just. So I don't like cooperating. So my mom tried to help me. She got all the booklets. She was feeding me whatever the diets that they proposed for someone with UC, and I was just completely resisting. And I lived in Kingston, and for my first year, I was on a food plan. It, just wasn't going well. I was making everything worse for myself. So we decided that it was time for me to see a dietitian. And she literally, her office is across from my specialist. So I go see my specialist, and then I go see my dietitian. They both yell at me for not, following exactly what they say. But it's
gotta find what works for you.
Exactly. So she's been helping me mostly just, like, figure out how to, like, be happy with what I'm eating, because I'm a food lover, and I'm almost positive every human is. And resisting your cravings, it makes you pretty miserable. So she's been helping me figure out how I can, love food still and enjoy it and enjoy each meal, but, not be constantly on the toilet every night of my life. So that's been good. The other person I see is a psychiatrist. I think, obviously, I come off a very positive person, but when you do get diagnosed with something that's lifelong and you've only been on this earth for 20 years, that's a bit shocking.
For sure.
So I think one of the biggest things has been recently I've started having anxiety about getting sick, whether it's like if I have a cold, I think I am about to have a heart attack, like anything. Like I will connect any one symptom to a deathly disease. Like if my lymph nodes are swollen, I'm like, well, I have a tumor. So that was becoming an issue. And it was like just like I never had anxiety before, and it's really debilitating. Like it's like a full body thing. And so I started seeing a psychiatrist just to like help me cope with it. The other thing that came up was like driving anxiety, just because like I like something.
Emma? I think we might have lost her.
Hello?
Oh, you're back.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're good.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay.
I was saying that when you get diagnosed with UC, it's not something you're in control of. And I found that when I'm driving, I'm not in control of everything on the road. So I started having driving anxiety. Anyways, anything that I worry about, talking to someone helps. And it doesn't help for everyone, but it's really helping for me. So I started doing that. And then, obviously, anyone who takes a biologic, they have a company that pretty much just, like, mediates everything. So you get, like, an agent, and they help you book appointments. If, like, there's something bugging you about, like, a clinic, you can...
I think we've lost you again. Emma?
Hi, this is the operator. Looks like Emma has disconnected. I guess she will be redialing shortly.
Okay. We will wait a couple minutes. Sorry about that, everyone.
I see her rejoining now. Any second.
Perfect.
Hello, Emma.
Hello.
Hi.
Technical difficulty. Not sure.
Sorry, but we lost you there.
All I saw was call failed. I was like, of course.
Oh, no.
So, one time, need it to work.
Sorry. That's all right. So I think we were just getting to your personal support system and how that has helped you.
Right. So I definitely hold my family close and my friends. As I said, I'm an open person, and so, just having people to talk to that aren't a medical professional and aren't going to, tell you maybe not what's on the book, be honest with you, and just, constantly having open communication with the people around you, that's also been really helpful. My mom was there with me every day at the hospital, and I actually lived with 7 girls in a house at school, with 3 bathrooms, which for someone with UC would be like a nightmare. But, people want to help you, especially the people that are close to you. And so I've just learned that, telling people my experiences, what kind of support I might need. All my housemates know that I've become a hypochondriac from, being diagnosed, and they're all there for me constantly. And it's just, if you tell them how they can help you, they'll be there to help you. And that's sort of what I've learned through this whole process.
Yeah, I definitely think being open and honest with people is huge, because you never know who has a digestive condition as well and can relate to you on that level, right? So That's super great. So getting into some coping mechanisms, as we mentioned, the brain-gut connection, how do you manage stress?
So before being diagnosed, I was the most stressed, intense person ever. I think sort of having the perspective as a teenager being diagnosed with a chronic disease, I realized grades are not important. Well, they aren't not important, but they are less important than your health. So just in general, that perspective brought my stress down, and then it became how to maintain stress about just regular life. So I've sort of managed to have a reasonable schedule, not overbook myself, especially in a business program. There's a lot of expectations to be a part of all these extracurriculars, constantly be involved, do this internship, do this volunteering, whatever it is. And I kind of had to sit myself down and be like, you can do 1 or 2 of these things, and that's it. And it became me realizing what I can and can't do and just accepting it. Again, sleep, as Effie mentioned, is huge. I require pretty much 8 hours of sleep a night, and it keeps me fueled. And honestly, it does manage my stress, because when I'm not sleeping, I get stressed. And when I do get enough sleep, I don't stress. So I've kind of just gone with that. And then the third thing is exercising. As I said, again, I was an athlete, and then when I just got diagnosed, I pretty much didn't exercise at all, just because I was sort of coping with whatever was going on. Once I started to exercise, I just became so much less stressed, happier. I think that exercise is literally the key to a lot of things, and you just need to do it to realize. But those have been my 3 key things. And honestly, other than that, I'm just keep in perspective and keep a positive outlook.
Cool. Yeah, I love that 3-step mindset that you have there. And you mentioned a pyramid of prioritization as well. Do you want to walk us through that?
Yeah. So in my brain, I'm a very, as a business student, I have all these, images, and one of them is my pyramid of prioritization. Before being diagnosed, I think I had a very altered pyramid. It was literally good grades, I played hockey, so hockey, and then, maybe my health, and then, my social life. And now that I know what it's like to have to really, really take care of yourself, I realized how skewed that was. So from now on, Like, it's always been number one, my health, beyond everything else. If I have a cold even, I'll be like, I need rest. I don't push myself as much as I used to, which I don't think is a bad thing for someone with a disease or without a disease. Like, you should prioritize your health, and I sometimes feel like in society we're told not to do that. And then the second one is just my well-being. Am I happy? Am I having relationships with people? Am I spending time with my family? Am I doing things that I enjoy? And I think that people almost sometimes forget about that key component, which is happiness, Yeah. And then third is where I put in, school and getting good marks. School's a great thing, and I love being in university, but not overstressing about grades has really helped my pyramid because it helps my well-being. I just want to work hard for myself to be happy, and then I stress less and it improves my health. So I guess you could look at it both ways too. And so I think that's great. Yeah,
that's awesome. It seems like you have a pretty good handle on finding what's new for you, like what works for you. So that's great. And then in terms of food and nutrition tips, I know you said you work with a dietitian, which is really great. So what tips and tricks could you give others on food and nutrition from a dietitian's point of view?
Yeah, so me and my dietitian, we definitely had a lot of back and forth. I was very resistant. I was like, my life is over. I will never be able to eat the food I ever want. And I was very distraught. And I thought I would only be able to eat like chicken breast and, that's it pretty much. And I'm not very prone to I don't like having too repetitive of a diet. So right off the bat, my dietitian gave me like a 5-page list of different lunch, breakfasts, and dinners that work generally for people with UC. So then I just began testing everything out. A lot of people say that raw veggies is something that affects them. It wasn't a huge problem for me, so I was like, great, I love salads. I have like 10 salad variations on the sheet. Perfect. And then like red meat was something that affected me. So I crossed out the 5 red meat options, and there are things that I fully integrated. A lot of people get impacted by coffee. I don't know why. I might be an alien, but for some reason it doesn't affect me. So for the first 6 months, I did not have a coffee. I didn't have a coffee. After that, I did. And then there's my favorite thing. So I'll have avocado toast every Wednesday just because I love it. And it makes me feel happy. And then I'll explore enough. And if I feel my stomach or my symptoms start to come on, I'll be like, I need to. Literally, and that's my workout. It's okay. And things I love, I'll pretty much plan in a schedule on to eat them.
Cool. Okay, and then what about intimacy and relationships? How do you cope with that, or do you have any tips on that subject?
As I mentioned, I'm a 20-year-old girl in university living with 7 other people. So right when I got diagnosed, I was really worried about, first of all, what people would think of me. Second of all, if I had to tell everyone. And third of all, if someone in my house would shun me for it. So all these things were things that I worried about for about maybe a month. And then I was like, why do I care? They don't care. It doesn't affect them. So why am I worried about what other people think of me? So from that point on, I just decided I'm not going to stress about it. I'm not going to worry about it. And I decided that that's how it is. At other people's house, if I have to go to the washroom, I will literally be like, listen, I got to go to the washroom. I'm sorry. Like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And sort of that attitude has gotten me through a lot. My housemates, I mean, I do live with them, so it was a bit different. I was like, this is what it is. This is what you expect. And if I need to go, you need to get out. Pretty much was the gist of it. But
and the taboo on poo is what we say at CDHF.
Yeah.
Break the taboo.
It's no longer a taboo in the house. I always think about it. I think people who you're around a lot become a lot more open about themselves as well, just from you being open with them, which I love too.
For sure.
And I've just decided my attitude is I don't care.
Cool. Okay. Well, you have tons of good advice so far, but is there anything else you would want to add, or how you maintain a positive outlook through all of this, being in university? It obviously is taking a toll on you, but how do you maintain that positive outlook?
I think the main thing for me from the beginning was that, I was 18 years old at the time, and being 18 and going through something like I did, being admitted in the hospital for a month, all that stuff, I came out of it like it was like I grew up 5 years earlier. I felt so much more secure. I was like, if I can go through that, there's a lot of things in my life that might seem a lot easier. And the way I look at it is, it is what it is. Whatever positive things I can take out of the entire experience, that's sort of what I grasp onto. And again, keep a positive outlook. And to this day, I always just think, everything that I can keep the same, I keep the same, and everything I need to tweak, I'll tweak a bit. And that's sort of it.
Yeah, finding your new normal.
Exactly.
Cool, awesome. Well, thank you, Emma. As I mentioned earlier, Emma has an awesome YouTube channel, so she should definitely check that out. And if you guys have any questions for her, we'll hear from her a little bit later. So now we'll move on to Katie. Hey, Katie. How are you?
Hello. Good. How are you?
I'm good. Welcome to the webinar. Do you want to give us a little bit of an introduction on you and your background and that sort of thing?
But first I need to preface with the fact that I kind of feel like the third contestant in the Miss America contest because I've had all this time and I'm listening to Effie and dabbing tears and then smiling and then I'm Emma. So I just want to give them a hug over the phone before I even go on with myself because it's so cool. This has so much value. I'm so glad you guys are doing this. So I'm a 41-year-old mother of 3 and as I was saying before we went live, I'm a junior high teacher, so that's happening right now. We're at the end of June. I'm a born and raised Calgarian. Super proud of it. If you guys have not come for Stampede, you need to come. It's everything that's advertised as. It's really fun.
I can attest to that.
It's there's something for everyone. Okay, so we're not working for the Stampede board right now, so I'll focus. I'm a skier as much as I can be. My husband's a skier as well. He raced for Canada for years. So we're a skiing family. We're a busy family. And I'd have nothing else but this. But, so I've had ulcerative colitis for a while now. I was diagnosed when I was 35. And, I genuinely got goosebumps listening to the other 2 ladies prior to me because it appears, and I've discussed this at length with my awesome GI, that there's this stage before you get diagnosed where you don't know if it's just gas, and then it's really bad gas, and then your body gets really angry, and then people tell you to take a Tums, and I hope that the education gets past people that have the disease to the people that don't know the disease, because I think that soft spot right before it gets out of control is really important to acknowledge. So I'm learning even from today for sure. So I've been on a rodeo of drugs, but in a good way. I'm currently on Zoljan, and it's working really well. and it's kind of exciting. Sorry to brag, ladies, but it's just a tablet. I just take a pill in the morning. Like, I brush my teeth and I take a pill. And even that took some psychology for me, because I had previously been on Remicade and I was on Humira. So Remicade through infusions for me, and Humira was, I gave myself injections. And so to just be told that I could take a little pill was a little bit too, flying unicorn for me. But so far, so good. So fingers crossed that this one sticks for a while. So,
super cool.
Yeah, it is.
And what was
exciting.
your experience like when you first got diagnosed?
Well, sort of like I alluded to, it was actually 2011, and I remember that very specifically because my saint of a mother took my 4-year-old, my 2-year-old, and my 10-month-old so that my husband and I could go on a vacation. And I flew over to meet him in Amsterdam. He was there for work, and I thought it was just the airplane food, or maybe the travel, or maybe the stress of leaving home. I didn't know, but I felt rotten the first day we got, out on bicycles like a postcard, really. And I ended up in the hospital in Amsterdam because I just said to my husband, I'm like, kind of like Effie was saying, it was the drive home for her when she was feeling like she was really on the edge. That was what it felt like. So it started then, but there was no blood in the stool. It was just massive, massive pain. And, you see on Hollywood films and television shows when, the pregnant lady gets sent home with gas. And so I was like, oh, God, what if that's what it is?
Oh, no.
Oh, no. But anyways, fast forward 2013, basically I got diagnosed with mild proctitis. And I think that doctors deserve a lot of credit because, every body is different and science is continuously improving. But somehow my proctitis snowballed. Maybe it was me in denial, not communicating, or my doctor and I not communicating. I'm not sure, but that's why this disease is such a mystery in many ways. And I went in for a colonoscopy, and I guess, unfortunately, it varies province to province, but there's always wait time. And it was a whole summer that I had to wait, basically. I had been into the emergency room, and they sent me home. They didn't tell me to take Pepto-Bismol, but essentially. And then I went in for my colonoscopy, and, honestly, it was like a movie. My mom drove me to the hospital, and I remember crying and just being really scared about being so sick, and feeling a little bit like no one really understood how sick I was. Everyone was supporting me, but no one understood what the days were like. Mm-hmm. And then I got into the GI clinic, which I knew fairly well from the proctitis and being in there. And I think I just let my guard down. And so I'll never forget this cute little nurse just looked up from my healthcare card and she said, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "No, I'm not." And I just fell over and fainted, I guess, to be dramatic, but it happened. I think I just let go. And then I woke up and spent 1 month in the hospital.
Wow.
So it was a major wall. And now that I can sort of healthily function, I feel that maybe that was I'd never wish it upon anyone, but there was a bit of a silver lining in it because I think I was sick for so long, but just going forward. Never being irresponsible. I was constantly phoning the clinic and trying different things and getting rest, but my body was sick. And so I guess that made everybody listen and everybody realized there had to be a bit of a change, So, yeah.
Okay, so now that you've sort of found your new normal, what are some ways that you manage your daily stress or that sort of thing?
Well, first, I think it's important for everyone to be really realistic about the word stress. And so I try and balance myself on that because I think it's a very, very valid thing. And I mean, I live in Calgary, so anyone that's ever spent time here, like, I know Toronto has the working city reputation, but Calgary's right behind you in the sense of, like, you know, you'd never not have a job. And if you didn't have a job, why aren't you doing something else? And if you have time off, why aren't you doing a project? And so I've had to really define what stresses me out and what stress looks like and see it sort of ahead of time. And the biggest thing, I think Emma was talking about it, well, Effie and Emma, but, like, rest is something that I think I used to just be like, oh, well, if I sleep, I sleep. Like, I never really, you know, I read the articles in all my, like, health magazines and stuff about how many hours you need, but it's an absolute calculation. Like, if there's anything truly that I would say sort of consistently, no matter what medication I've been on, no matter if I'm working or not, no matter if I have 2 kids or 3 kids, it's been the rest that's been huge. And I think that rest needs to be defined too. You know, it doesn't necessarily mean that's when you go to sleep. Rest can look lots of different ways. So I'm a school teacher, and I already have, you know, at my school, I've had a very candid conversation with my administration, who are great, but just so they know, like, you know, if they walk by and they see me sitting down and talking to the kids, that doesn't mean I'm not teaching. That's a way for me to build rest into my day, which I think, you know, whether you're working or at school or whatever, you can figure out it's kind of cutting out little pieces of rest throughout the day, as opposed to being like, I have to be in bed at 9, because that's not realistic for me. And I'm sure with being a student and being a photographer, like, there's all these different schedules, so you have to just figure out where it fits, right?
Yeah, and you can put more stress on yourself by, like, constantly being like, I need to go to bed by 9, you know? Like,
you can feel, like, bad about it. And you know, what if you're out for supper with, like, a girlfriend you haven't seen? Do you just cap it off? Because that could actually relieve your stress, to see her and have a good time. And I also, I mean, we have an iCal that seriously should be under a study, because we're not an overcommitted family, but there's a lot of things going on at all times. And so sometimes I actually block into our calendar for, like, 2 days off in a row of not saying yes to a family dinner or whatever, because you can sometimes not realize you've packed yourself so much, right? And everybody's busy. Doesn't matter what walk of life you're in. Busy is defined as what you have in your life. So I just try and make sure that I deal with that. And I also think it's really important to try, big emphasis on try and, like, put out your fires before they come. So, like, in my situation with children, or, I mean, even someone taking care of themselves and cooking for themselves, I think it's like, you know, if you see something at the superstore or a supermarket that you love, buy as many as you can fit in your house or your apartment, because those little things, when you've had a long day and you're tired, can really put you at the edge. Like, I've had moments where I've been in a grocery store and I've realized, oh my gosh, I'm, like, making myself sick because I'm so tired, because I didn't just buy 6 boxes of the pasta when I should have, you know? So those kind of things are important. And then lastly, I just think it's really important to say no. which is
hard for some people.
Oh, I know people say it, but it's like, honestly, you just have to try it once or twice. So try it with people that you're not really close with first. Try your no with them and see how that goes, and then you're gonna, like, be empowered. You'll be like, wait a minute, I just declined an invitation. That's amazing. And then it keeps going forward. And actually, I think the more you say no, you start to sort of be aware of other people saying no, and you realize that's a part of the way the world works too, right, is setting your own boundaries.
For sure. No, that's really good advice.
Because you're not really good to anyone if you wear yourself thin. If you say yes to everyone, then you're operating at 50% with everyone, and that doesn't work for your health, and it doesn't work for the people that want to have a piece, right?
No, for sure. Cool. So in terms of food and nutrition, we heard some different tips and tricks sort of from Effie and Emma. Both of them sort of plant-based has worked, as So what tips do you have in this area, or what works for you?
Well, I'd say at the age of 41 that you kind of have to be comfortable with the change just as much as changing needs with your body entirely. I worked, when I left the hospital, I worked really closely with this amazing nutritionist, and I've checked in with her every now and then. So I don't kind of need her as regularly because I have a bit of a toolkit from her. But she was so amazing that I could text a photo of something that I thought was what she meant in the grocery store. It was like the kids crawling all over the grocery cart. And she would say, no, but try this. And she would send it back. So just so people know that that's like, I mean, I don't think she's an exception. She's exceptional. But I think that that's sort of a standard that people should go for when they're looking for a nutritionist that genuinely wants to help them. And also, I sought her out because she had Crohn's. So I felt like there was too many books that I picked up that just said, you know, if I just eat kale, I'll feel better. And what ended up happening is we worked out that I did like the FODMAP diet. So I'm sure people are aware, but if not, FODMAP is an acronym for short chain carbohydrates that appear really healthy. Like a lot of them are fabulous, fabulous foods, like and have other health attributes like garlic and onion and kale and stone fruits like cherries and peaches. But for people with digestive issues, those short chain carbohydrates can cause some digestive stress. And so I worked with her very religiously, and we sort of did a bit of an elimination diet, but she was really concerned with maintaining nutrition, which I think is super important, right? Like, it's okay to be afraid of the dark, but not to be afraid of food, especially when your body needs that. So
for sure.
I kind of follow a low FODMAP diet to the best of my ability. Like, don't get me wrong, sometimes at the school I eat from the vending machine, you know, to try your best.
How can you not?
Yeah, and then the other thing that I found has worked for me, and it's not like a religion, I'm not trying to push anyone, but I did genuinely go off of gluten for a full year, and then I thought, oh, I'm better.
Yeah.
So I sent this like apologetic email to my family and everyone else that had supported me through non-gluten items, and then I said, I'm back. Let's do this. And it lasted about a month, and my body was not happy at all. So I don't eat any form of gluten whatsoever. But there's massive options now. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I should mention that CDHF has a lot of good resources on the FODMAP. So some people don't know what it is, so we sort of outline that, and as well as gluten-free information too. So check those out. So moving on to intimacy and relationships, what sort of tips can you give on that front?
Well, I think sort of to echo the other ladies that spoke, I think that honesty is huge, and being comfortable with just letting people know your needs. The irony is, like, if anyone's ever had to go to the washroom, they've ever had to poo, and they're in a situation where they have to poo, and they're holding it in, what happens, right? Like, you have discomfort, your head's all over the place, you're sweating. And, like, I think if you aren't honest about what your needs are, that you live continuously with that inside your body, and that does not assist with healing, you know?
For sure.
And unfortunately, but in the long run, fortunately, I think that it forces you to be honest with yourself, you know? Like, I'm a lot older than Effie and Emma, but I'm young in spirit, girl. But I think that you really have to accept the word, like disease, and you have to accept that there are differences. The cool thing is we're not locked into a situation where we can't be out and doing things and trying things and figuring out what works for us. You know, we're not dependent on one source, but owning that sort of illness and saying that and letting people know what your needs are huge. I have a fabulous husband, but even he took a while to, I think because it was so shocking when I went into the hospital, even though he was very helpful in trying his best to keep me comfortable when I wasn't well. I think when you're in the hospital, it's official, unfortunately. And he also had to work through some of his own fears to be able to be available for me, right? So he needed to educate himself, and I feel that people are most likely to do so if you, as the quote-unquote sick person, facilitate that. So sometimes I'll just send some of my closest friends a really great article about ulcerative colitis or digestive disorders or whatever, because it helps them to just sort of be reminded, whereas prior to being quite sick, I probably would have just downplayed it. I would have just said, oh, no, don't worry, I'm fine. And now I'm like, no, I'm not fine.
Yeah, it helps them understand what's going on with you.
Yeah, it's less so when I take the Xeljanz tablet, but when I injected myself every week, I was like, what, I'm pretty sure most of my girlfriends aren't putting a needle in their stomach tonight, and so I had to share that with them because they can't support me if they don't know, and I think Emma, sort of said that too, but yeah.
And then you mentioned, being honest with your doctor and the people around you. Do you want to elaborate on the new normal and that sort of thing you talked about?
Yeah, I think it's important to be honest with your GI and honest with the people in your life. On my first slide that sort of spoke about who I was, I love that I got termed a wine enthusiast. But I don't lie about things like that because, I don't know what the statistics are, but there's some statistics that's crazy about, when you fill out the GP form at the doctor's office and they're like, how many drinks do you have a day? Have you ever smoked? And, the statistics of people lying is over the top, right? So I don't feel that my doctors can treat me if they don't know who I am. So I tell them, I like wine, I drink coffee, all the no-nos. But that helps because they treat me as I am, as opposed to me sort of lying to them to start off the process. So that's huge. And then I also even divulge to my GI, if work is stressing me out, or if I'm worried about one of my kids, or if my husband and I are, unaligned, to use politically correct terms. I tell her those things because typically my disease seems to respond most to those uncontrolled life situations. And so if she doesn't know that's who she's dealing with, then she can't treat me. Or, I don't want to jump a medication and say, okay, well, that medication's not working for you, if I can also identify that there's, a huge amount of stress factors in my life at that point. So I like to counter that. Yeah, and I think that it was Effie at the start that sort of said about being able to get sad sometimes, and I think that's a huge thing. I mean, that's not just ulcerative colitis, that's everyone should just have an emotional dump, pardon the pun, now and then, right? And
for sure.
I had mentioned to you guys that my maternal grandmother had ulcerative colitis, so the prime of her disease when she was most sick would have been sort of the early 60s. So I mean now we send poo emojis. We I've seen people walking down the street in poo onesies. It's
we have the hats and everything here.
Yeah, it's a different time and place, and I'm genuinely happy about that because it allows us to even do what we're doing tonight, right? Have a conversation. Let's talk about this, not just be sick in the washroom by yourself. And so
for sure.
I think it's just reminding ourselves of how far we've come is important too.
Yeah, and on the topic of being honest with your doctor, instead of writing everything down in your journal or whatever, CDHF recognized that it was super important to communicate with your doctor, so we created an app and we recently launched it. It's called CDHF app in the iPhone, for the iPhone only right now, but it allows you to track your symptoms, your stool, your mood, all your medications and all of that, so you can go into your doctor and say, hey, this is what's happening, this is what happened on this specific day. So just a little tip if anyone's looking for something to help track your symptoms too. And then, Katie, how do you maintain a positive outlook? Like, what are your final words that if you could give advice to those who have just been recently diagnosed or have had it for a while?
I think a Miss America question would be easier. Why don't you ask me about world peace?
World peace?
No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. I guess, to echo what the other ladies have said, I think that you do have to maintain a sense of humor. I mean, the articles that I've posted so far for you guys, I'm not trying to make light of a serious disease, and I recognize that, but it is the reality you're living with. And so, I'm a pretty big believer in energy and what you put out and how it, manifests in your life. So I will be honest, I spent a little bit of time, a couple months actually, feeling pretty sorry for myself, and thinking that everything had to stop, and that's just adjusting. So people that go through health crises, relationship crises, that's a normal response. But then it's about the rebuild. I was a huge, huge runner. I ran the Chicago Marathon and the Boston Marathon, and now I'm like, hey, a 5K run is cool,
Yeah.
And I should be happy about that. And I give myself medals in the form of coconut ice cream bars, and that's what I do, and I do try and make it easier for people around me to deal with. So I think it was Effie that said that her parents were upset and that they blamed themselves, and my parents never really said that, but they definitely had some weird guilt about it, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure you guys didn't program my DNA, so let's just let that go. And try to help them realize the positives. The cool thing is there is medication now, and there isn't just one. There's many medications, and then there's people who make careers out of designing nutritional diets for us, and there's foundations like you guys that give us a voice and give us a place to look, and I think that is what helps me feel like it's going forward a little bit. I will say very point blank that I don't believe everything happens for a reason, and I want to punch that person, but but I do think that if it's your reality, you have to frame it in the way that you want to live your life. And if you want to be healthy, I think that the only way to frame it is somewhat within positivity. You don't have to be making jokes as much, but you have to let people know you have it, and you have to let people ask you about it. And the more education we have, like I mentioned, I'm a teacher, and I can see right now kids, and I just want to reach out. I just want to say, hey, do you know about this? Or talk to their parents about it, because it's like you can see it. You can see their patterns, the washroom. It can't be my teaching. It can't be. It's not why they're leaving.
No.
So, yeah.
Okay. So on the topic of humor, we wanted to mention that Katie has written a couple articles for us that we really, really love about making a colonoscopy day a personal day for yourself, and just embracing your IBD identity. And they're super lighthearted and fun, so definitely check those out. We love doing webinars and blog articles on patient experiences, because I think, like you said, it just sheds a totally different light on what healthcare professionals are saying and that sort of thing. So it's super interesting to learn from others' experiences. So thank you all for sharing that with us today. We have gone a little bit over, so I'll get to 2 questions, and then I can ask you guys these questions and post them later for viewing. So first question, I think, would be for Effie. Mary asks, how do you stick to a plant-based diet? Are there any tips for someone who wants to try, and are there any good resources that you would recommend for that?
Hi. I actually do have some really good resources. My GP showed me this guy named Dr. Greger. Let me just pull it up. So it's called The Daily Dozen. So there's also an app you can get called the Daily Dozen, and it tells you everything that you need to eat during that day to get like your full nutrients, like everything you would need covered. And it's super helpful. I'm pretty sure he's also written a book called How Not to Die. Yeah, it's him. And basically he goes over how this diet is like saving people's lives and curing diseases. And yeah, it's super interesting. I just think if you research this diet and understand like how this can help you, that's on its own, it helps you stick to it. So that's
a really great reason.
Yeah. Also just like have people keep you accountable. So as I mentioned in my presentation earlier, like my boyfriend's on top of me like all the time, making sure I eat well. What? Right here, just listening to me saying on top of you. But yeah, if he sees me like try to cheat or anything, he basically smacks it out of my hand because he doesn't want to see me feeling like shitty on the toilet, and he doesn't want to see me in the hospital or anything.
Yeah.
Also, my parents went plant-based, not specifically for me, but it definitely helped get some like home-cooked meals that were vegan, and yeah, super lucky. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Effie. I have a question for Katie. How do you explain your disease to your children in a way that they can understand? Do you have any advice for a stressed out mother?
Well, I'm very, very honest with them, but I do edit a little bit. So I like to just talk more about the science of it. And I actually, at my GI's clinic is located in the University of Calgary's Faculty of Medicine, which is connected directly to the hospital that I go to. And they have a fabulous bookstore where you can get really exciting home decor, such as this beautiful diagram of our digestive system. So I actually got one, and we have 3 bathrooms, which is an article that's coming soon because we only had one. But when you get ulcerative colitis, you somehow get a bathroom reno. Yeah, so I put one of the diagrams up in the bathroom just for the kids to get used to looking at it and going like, what is that, right? Like my kids are 12, 10, and 9. So they're old enough to get it. And I explained to them, it's a laminated poster, so with like an erasable marker, and then I sort of show them all the parts and whatever. And then I've tried to keep it really light. One thing I'm very, very aware of is not causing my kids to have any sort of weird like food anxieties. So I realized I was saying out loud in front of my kids, oh, I can't eat that. Like I'll poo my pants, And I didn't realize like they weren't old enough. Like they were still in the age of like, I might poo my pants. So I had to start editing how I presented food, and so I tried to do that. And then I have another article that's going to be up soon, I hope, if it passes the editing process. But it's called Poos Get a High Five at My House, because I actually ask my kids every now and then if I can check out the poo, which my 12-year-old is really not into anymore, but whatever. Because I just want, I want them to know, like, that's healthy. That's a good one. You did it,
Yeah, that's great.
But I don't really go down the road of, where sort of we all hope to not get to, but like sometimes people's end reality is, having the bag and like that whole situation. But I'm very open. Like I tell them, like, there is nothing funnier than your kids' faces. If you're like, what'd you do today, Mom? Well, there was a camera up my bum. I got this video. Do you guys want to watch the video? Like, I mean, I think it's person to person. So, with all due respect to the person asking the question, if that's not the vibe in their house, I think at least educating them Because isn't it weird, don't you think, that like we really don't start to learn about the inside of our bodies until we're like reluctant teenagers in high school? You know, like we don't look at all those parts. So I might have purchased a few more posters.
Yeah.
I got the skeletal system. I got the muscular system. I'm learning things, but it's a good way to make something tangible. Because I think if they hear the word mom, disease, sick, illness, and they don't understand what that means, that's important. And then one time, and it was the worst appointment of my life, but one time I brought all of them to my GI. But I had warned my GI, and I just said, I really think they need to, like, lay eyes on you. And if they understand where mommy goes and where mommy parks and who mommy talks to, and my GI is amazing, then they'll have some less sort of anxiety about the unknown. You know, there's sort of a scale. There's a scale of like what kids are afraid of at certain ages. Yeah. And it's important to sort of speak to that, I guess. Yeah.
No, and I think that's good that you don't use the terms illness or chronic or sick, because those can be scary, but instead putting it into a positive light is always good. Yeah. So cool. So we'll ask Emma a question because there has been a couple more, but we're unfortunately running out of time. So I'll ask you, Emma, how did you go about finding a dietitian and a therapist?
So for the dietitian was completely referred to me by my GI. They kind of like worked together. And the hospital I was like originally admitted into was recommended by one of our family friends, just because in Toronto, Mount Sinai is known for being really, really good for anything digestive. Mm-hmm. And so right off the bat, like our family or friend referred us to a really great GI, and a lot of my healthcare people have been through him. And then for my psychiatrist, literally just someone in the area that we trusted. It was pretty easy, and since I am pretty open and my family is as well, my mom was very good at talking to her friends about, you know, hey, like, we're looking for this. What would you recommend? Mm-hmm. Obviously, for people who aren't as open, that it might not be as easy, but for my family, it was just, you know, talk to other people who might have experiences with whatever it is and figure out what works best.
Yeah, for sure. And the Dietitians of Canada has a great search on their website as well if you're looking for one in your area. But that is all the time we have today. I want to thank you girls again for taking the time to share your experiences. It's really cool to hear from different ages and at different stages in your life how you're dealing with ulcerative colitis. So thank you for being so honest and open today. And I'd also like to thank Pfizer Canada, Merck, and Takeda for sponsoring this great webinar. The webinar will be available on our website at cdhf.ca in probably the next few days for anyone that wants to review or share the content. So we will talk to you soon. Have a good evening, everyone.